So this video is just going to give you a really brief introduction to Jinja. We're going to create a really basic HTML template and Python file, and then we'll progressively go further into how we can use Jinja in our code to help make our templates more interactive. So Jinja works hand in hand with Flask. As far as I'm aware, it doesn't stand for anything. I'm not sure what it does. But what it allows us to do is it allows us to pull data into our HTML templates and use Jinja to fill in those gaps. So, for example, we can pull in variables, and we can do lists and mathematical calculations and all sorts of things like that, and put that into our HTML templates. Now, this is going to be really useful when we're building web applications, because it'll allow us to pull in API data. It'll allow us to get data from a form and store that, pull that into our HTML templates as well. So there's a lot you can do with it, okay? And it's really quite simple to use. There's 3 different types of syntax that you need to be aware of, and we'll go through those in the video. But the first thing we're doing is we're working in PyCharm. The reason we're using PyCharm is just because that's what's in college, and it's easier to stick to it. But most of these are transferable across any IDE that you use. It might just be running the Python code that's a little bit different. So I've created a brand new project. I've just called mine Jinja. And the first thing I'm going to do is just install the Flask framework, and that will install Jinja alongside with it. So I go to the file menu, to settings, and then I'm going to go down to the project tab here, and then go to Python interpreter. And I'm just going to click on this little plus here, and I'm going to type for Flask. And you get quite a lot of things come up, but we just want the basic Flask here, and install packages. And that will do its thing in the background, hopefully, and install those packages for me, which it has done. Brilliant. Okay, so you see now I've got Jinja 2 here, which is what we need. So the first thing I'm going to do is, in this root folder, I'm going to create a new Python file. So I'm going to right click on new, click on Python file, and I'm just going to call mine app.py. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is import Flask. So I'm going to do from Flask, import Flask. Note that the first one is lowercase, the second one has an uppercase F. And I'm also going to import render template. So render template is the framework we need in order to take our Jinja values and render them into that HTML file that we've got. So that will allow us to do that and pass those values across. Okay, and again, that comes as part of the Flask framework itself. Then we are going to go ahead and create our Flask app, just like we do every time. Nothing different there. And we can call our app whatever we want, but we're going to call it app in this case. And it's going to be Flask, and open brackets, and I'm going to do underscore underscore name underscore underscore. So now we've created our application called app. We're going to create a root. So a root in our Flask application are the various areas it's going to go to, and you can call those whatever you like. We're just going to do a basic home page one, just so I can show you how it works. Okay, so I'm going to do to do start the root, app dot root, and I'm just going to call this one the root, so the home page. So when we load it, it's the first one it's going to go to. Now within this root, we need to have a function. Okay, so I'm going to define a function called Jinja intro. Not going to have any parameters, and always the colons afterwards when we define a function. And I'm just going to create a variable called message, and in my quotes here I'm going to write some HTML code. So I'm just going to do a header, so a h1 header, which says hello world, and then close that header. And then what I'm going to do after I've done that is I'm going to return my message. Okay, and that's going to be it. So that is going to take this H1 code and convert it into HTML, and that's all I'm doing at the moment. Okay, I'm not using a separate HTML page, and I can make this as long as I want and put as much HTML code in there. So previously, when we've done this, we've put in an if statement at the bottom to run it, just because that's how PyCharm works. But I want you to get used to running your apps through the terminal, okay? So down in this right hand side here, you've got a set of icons down here, and you want to hover over the one called terminal. And in that, all you're going to do is type Flask run. Flask being the framework, and run obviously is getting it to run. And we're going to do that rather than using the options up here, which we currently do. So I'm going to click flask.run, and you'll see you get exactly the same as what we've usually got. So clicking on this now, you'll see I've got my hello world, okay? And I can expand this as much as I like and add as much more that I want in there. But obviously, once we start getting into longer code and more complex functionality, that's where we're going to need to store our HTML templates separately and render those using the render template, which is what we're going to do now. Okay, so I'm just going to close this down now and stop that running. So I'm going to terminate the process. Yep, and I'm going to now develop this a little bit further. So first thing I need to do is create a HTML template, and we'll need to create a folder within our directory to hold those templates. Okay, so I can't just put them in the same area. So I'm going to right click on here, new, and I'm going to do directory this time, and I'm going to call it templates. Now this must be lowercase, is case sensitive, so templates all lowercase in there. And then once I've done that, you'll see it's created a new folder under Jinja. I'm going to right click again, and this time new and HTML file. And I'm just going to call this one Jinja.html. Okay, and you'll see it opens up a new HTML file with some default text on here, and I'm just going to call this what is Jinja. Okay, now this if you obviously you're aware of HTML. If not, go away and do some research on HTML and how that works. I'm not going to go through that in this video, but I'm just going to show you how we can now use Jinja syntax to pull values in. So let's say I want to greet a user. Let's say they're logged in and I want to say, hello so-and-so, welcome to this web page. So I'm going to do a H1 tag again, and I'm going to go hello, and then there'd be a space where there's a user. So we're going to have that information stored in our Python in a minute, but I want to put a placeholder, a Jinja placeholder in there. Now the syntax for that is curly braces. So 2 curly braces, and then I'm going to give it a variable or a placeholder name. So I'm going to put user, and then 2 curly braces again. All right, like so. And then I'm going to do another heading, this time H2, welcome to the website. Okay, just like that. So I've created now a HTML page that if I ran it at the moment, it would just say, hello user, welcome to the website. There's nothing in here at the moment to link it to our Python code. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to create another route, and this time I'm going to pull in this HTML code, and I'm going to use Jinja to replace this placeholder with a value that I set. So let's go and do that, shall we? So underneath here, I'm going to do another app route. So at app, oh, not spelled like that, app.root. And then this time I'm going to do it / Jinja spelled right. Okay, so I'm going to create another function underneath here. So def, and I'm going to call this first, God, I can't type today, first Jinja. Open and close brackets, no variables to pass across, and I'm going to close those, so add in the colon there. All right, so this time I need to give it a value for this user. Okay, now in real life you could pull this from a form, you could pull it out of a database, and we're going to get into that later, but for now we're just going to pass a value that we've got hard coded in here. So I'm going to say user equals Bob. I'll put Bob in strings, might help. User equals Bob. Okay, now what I'm going to do now is slightly different to this one here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do return like normal. This time I'm going to use this render template. So I'm going to say what I want you to do is when you return this function to this app route, I want you to go and find Jinja.html. So that's the template name. Okay, that's where it's going to. And then where you see this user placeholder, I want you to replace it with this user. Okay, so it'll be Bob, and pass over Bob. Okay, That's what I want to do. So user equals user. I know it seems a bit bonkers, and these names don't have to be the same, but when you're programming, it's useful to have them similarly named, just so you can build the link quite quickly. Okay. So let's go through and run this again, shall we? So I'm going to go down to my terminal tab again, and I'm going to do Flask run again. And this time when I open it up, so it still says hello world at the moment because that is looking at this route here. So I now need to replace that with the /Jinja. And there we go. So I've got hello Bob, welcome to the website. All right. And now if I replace this with anything else, so if I go Jeff, so let's terminate that. Let's rerun it again. So Flask run it again, /Jinja. And there you go. Now it says Jeff. And you can replace that anytime you like. Okay. And we can obviously, like I said later, we'll look at how you can pull this in from different areas. Okay. So that is just a little introduction into how to create a template and how to put in a Jinja value. In a minute, we're going to look at how we can use expressions and other things and more complicated calculations and statements into our Jinja code.